Hi, Nikki. Welcome to the Frostcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to talk about sort of all things content, social media, personal brands, and business. So obviously you run a podcast of your own called The Tea with Nikki. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, give us a headline or a summary of your podcast?
So there are two series under the Tea with Nikki. So there's Tea with Nikki, which is just with me and another guest, where we focus on normalizing failure. So we talk about their fuck ups, their failures. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear, but and then learning the lessons from that and how they've overcome those, etc. Always find those very inspirational. And then I've got another series that I do on the podcast called Life in Black and White. And if you see the cover of it, you'll see it's pretty self-explanatory. It's with my best friend, Azi Sipo. She's black, I'm white. So Life in Black and White. And that is more kind of a conversational podcast in terms of the content that I produce. It's more just everyday conversations. We've spoken about contraception, friendships, personal time. But what we've been doing recently is we felt there was a gap that a lot of people were very confused with who to vote for and what do these manifestos mean in South African politics, as we had a South African election. So we did a road to elections in the series as well, which has been really fun, but it's given a bit of political fatigue.
So what I was kind of something I've been thinking about for a while is a lot of businesses and a lot of people who are producing content, they use that word, I'm producing content. And I wanted to get an idea from you is when someone says the word I'm creating content, what does that actually mean? As in, like, what qualifies to you as content? Maybe what does or what doesn't qualify as content?
That's actually a very interesting question. I don't think I've actually thought about that myself. But when I hear content, I think that it's something that people can absorb or consume. So something that is not just like an Instagram carousel post. I wouldn't say that's really content because that's just maybe me posting 10 pictures of myself. That's not really, it can be classified as content because it's my Instagram content. But when I hear someone is producing or creating content, it's something that's going to have some sort of value, whether it's, being a fly on the wall conversations like in this podcast, this is creating content. This is something, hopefully someone is going to find some value. So I always think content is you think of the end user and what are you wanting to provide, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose that's fair enough. I think when you said consumable or it can be absorbed probably makes the most sense because I think people often get confused. Like content is just, it can be classified as pretty much anything that's created, I suppose. But I guess there's sort of different types of content. And I suppose on that topic, do you think there's a distinguishable difference between business-based content and personal brand content? And what do you think those differences are?
Do you think that there is a difference? Having worked on my own personal branding, obviously creating content for my podcast, etc., it's different to what I do on my personal account. My personal account I use as like a blog in a ways. I post stories. I feel like I'm on Snapchat with 24-hour stories. Like I post a lot more stories than I do actual images. But then on my podcast, it'll be trailers or things that, like I mentioned and Raoul pointed out, consumable, absorbable kind of content. So with the road to elections was trailers for the podcast so people can see, it's coming out. What are we going to be discussing? There's been other content that I've produced on there, which can be quotes that maybe I resonate with, that maybe might resonate with other people around failure. So it depends also on what the branding is. So I would say that my Instagram account for the podcast would be, I'm going to use that as like the business example. So that is the valuable content. I don't really post a lot of personal stuff. I'm not going to post, oh, I did a workout this morning on my podcast account. I'm not going to post about how, I'm going to a networking event tonight. That'll go more maybe on my personal than on my private. On the business. The business account will be stuff that's put information or content that will be relating to whatever I've been putting forth on the platform and how I want to be perpetuated. So that comes back to the content of what I was saying of absorbable, consumable, and what value are you providing at the end. So a business, when they're producing content, they have to think about what value are they providing for their customer at the end. What do they want the engagement to be? How do they want the customer to feel? So if I'm looking at, say, my day job now, I'm looking at the marketing from a standpoint of they need to know who we are. So that's where kind of the personal branding comes in, because every person is different, but a company is made of people. So that on a personal level fits in with the brand because it's the team. And it shows also quirkiness or whatever. We humanize the company. And also looking at, valuable content in terms of what we've produced on blogs and things like that, getting that, in like a carousel form, maybe on the platform, so then people can engage with it, see that it is valuable. Then also showcasing case studies of things that we've worked on. That is not stuff that I would always maybe put on my personal. Yes, I'll put some content relating to work, obviously, like on my LinkedIn, relating to work, like things that we've done or projects I've been involved with or partnerships. But you'll also see on my LinkedIn, I post my personal LinkedIn, I post personal content as well. Like, oh, I went to the rugby game this weekend, or I did a cycle, or I post about my rheumatoid arthritis. So that, again, that's my personal branding. They know I work for this company, but who I am as a person, my content is different because I'm not the company. I am me. So I want people to connect with me, relate to me, and then the business content to relate to the company. I don't know if I've answered what you've asked, but in my mind, that's making sense.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you started when you touched on the next question I had. So I'm not trying to get you to repeat. Maybe this is a niche answer to what you've already spoken into. But Raul and I work with a few businesses, let's call it medium-sized businesses, who are brick and mortar stores. They're selling product, clothing or shoes or whatever. And we've been surprised by how many businesses grow to a medium size and they don't have a digital footprint in terms of they're not creating any online content. And so then they come to us and they work with us and they say, we want to start producing content. We don't know where to start because they've never done it. The person who's in charge of the business has never worked in a digital career before, so they have no experience in it. So the question they come to us, which I'm going to mirror and pose onto you to see what your thoughts are on it, is just, if I'm a business and I have no digital footprint at all, I want to start making content, where do I start? What's my first, step that I take?
You have to define how the perception of the business. I think that's the best way to say it. So how do you want people to perceive the business? What are the business values? Starting with that, what are the values? Listing 3 to 5 values, is it integrity, honesty, quality, all the typical adjectives that people use, but they do have value because then it helps for you to align the feeling of the company. Like, are you an innovative company coming in? Is this, is that what you're trying to perpetuate? You have to think about how do you, again, in customer, how do you want them to feel and resonate with the brand? So starting internally, looking at what are your values, how would you describe the company, and then looking at, how do you want people to perceive it? So, say it's honesty, integrity, and innovation. Those are the main ones. Cool. Well, are there specific colors? Because you do have to start thinking about colors, because colors also evoke emotions. So, everyone can just do black and white. That's very easy. But if you're doing a logo and a design, maybe use those colors. But colors also evoke emotions. And blue, as we know, is more calming. Red can be seen more as an aggressive color. Yellow is happy. So also, what are you wanting people to feel when you are producing this content? And, are you going to be more sleek design or more quirky and fun and like chaotic? So the companies have to start thinking about that. What is the branding? Starting internally, how do we view ourselves? And, what resonates with us? What colors? What fits in the branding? And because you also have to think about little things like font and sizing and how that looks and how it reads as well. And then again, what are you wanting your end client to feel when they're engaging with your brand and the content? So that would be my thinking. It's like, how do we see ourselves? How do we want people to see ourselves? And then working that together into how you can take that online.
Yeah, I think a lot of brands, because a lot of what you were saying now is kind of what I do on my side with regards to branding and logos and fonts and all the sort of visual elements. But I think a lot of people now have kind of gone, I think businesses went through this very like corporate-y phase, probably like maybe 10 to 20 years ago. And I think in more recent times, branding and the perception of businesses and messaging has changed actually quite a lot. I think businesses are much more like personal and quirky and like fun now, because I think people kind of got bored with this corporate sort of very stale visuals, you know.
Corporates are still very much there.
No, they are, and I think some of those guys are kind of
long-standing. So
exactly, you like look at FedEx, for example, right? I mean, maybe not the best example because they do have some interesting colors, but they are very like, it's just FedEx. It's always been FedEx. I think it will always be FedEx. As whereas you look at maybe like more recent companies like Stripe, for example, they've come out with something quite innovative in terms of payment, you know, processing and stuff like that. But they've used very sort of like more rounded fonts, more fun, more interesting, using lilac and, you know, purples and stuff like that to kind of attract people's attention. Because I think a lot of companies nowadays realize that people are so used to being on a screen that anything boring will just lose someone's attention within like 0.1 of a second. So you have to create this sort of more interesting thing that catches someone's eye and they're like, oh, wow, what is that? Which I prefer, honestly. Like, I think corporate branding is super boring, and it's honestly, I never incorporate that style into what I do for people. I always try and make it something a bit out the box, a bit eye-catching, something unique, something different, because it does make it harder in a way, because these days everyone's trying to be unique.
Everyone's trying to.
So it's like trying to then make something more unique than whatever exists already is really kind of, you know, I guess difficult. But yeah, I guess you kind of just have to sort of, I guess, take inspiration from others and then sort of form your own perception. And I suppose the content you have to put out there, I feel like as you say, you've got to sort of evaluate the different values of the company and kind of how you just want to make people feel at the end of the day. Do you want to make them feel like they're in this super professional thing, or do you want to make them feel like they're talking to a more human sort of style? So yeah, but I suppose on inspiration then, that kind of leads on to the next question, which is, what inspired you to start your podcast, The Tea with Nikki?
Well, as I said to you, James, earlier, you both know from school days, I love to talk. So that was kind of a no-brainer in that way. No, I'm kidding. That is partly the reason. But it was COVID time, actually, when I started it. And prior to joining the working world, I've always been interested in interviews and interviewing and conversations and learning about people. At UCT, I was part of UCT Radio, so I was also on air. I had my own segments. I was events coordinator, so I was used to always engaging and having conversations with people, and always wanted to have my own show. Well, I think a lot of kids feel that way, but like I wanted my own show. And obviously you listen to radio going to school and whatnot. And there was a Future Females Summit, online summit over 2 days. And one of the speakers, his name is David, I forgot his surname, but he has a podcast in Germany called Role Models. Very similar kind of content, but obviously different at the same time. And I listened to what he said and actually reached out to him on Instagram. And I said, I've been thinking about this, creating a YouTube channel or a podcast to do these things. What would you say is the first start? And he goes, just start. Literally, just start. So I thought, okay, I'll just start. And I did just that. I started reaching out to some people that I thought who I think I would have interesting conversations with, and I'd be curious to hear their stories about their fuck-ups and failures. So I've had some incredible guests on, all during COVID. I think people also had more time, so I had a lot more access to these people. I had like Rachel Khaleesi on, Motsidisi Mohono. For those who don't know, she's the rugby super sports anchor, essentially. She's like the main anchor. And then like Kanya, I forgot her surname, but she's known as King Kanya on Insta, huge following. Love that chick. She's such a vibe. But like I've spoken with amazing people. First, it was mostly women, because I know a lot of us women, and I know me specifically, struggle with perfectionism. So I was like, I need to talk about failure, that actually it becomes normal for me, so that I stop fearing doing things because I'm scared of the perception of failure, etc. So I wanted to, change the narrative essentially. And yeah, it's been really great fun. It's had its dips and dives because of personal life, but it's always a great time.
You talking about all the amazing guests you sort of had on the show over the last few years. I was interested, maybe this is a tough question. I've got one more tough question after this one for you, which I think is actually more tough than this one. But the first question is, what are some of maybe top 3 skills or things that you've learned from some of the guests you've had on your show? Maybe skills is the wrong word, but just tips that you picked up on.
Lessons?
Yeah, lessons.
So many. I mean, I think I've had over 30 guests on the podcast. Preferably, and I know I brought up Motsidisi Mohono. With her, I found a very valuable lesson for me for the podcast as well, because she was on radio before and she's been a presenter for a while now. And obviously, the podcast and YouTube platform, you're presenting a bit. And now I feel like I know the lesson, but I forgot how to word it now. But essentially, she was saying, to not get worked up, to try and back yourself on camera. Don't try and fill space as well with words that don't need to be there. And just to be not mindful when you talk, but to be aware. Because she said she remembers from one of her first presentations, I think she said the word was effectively. And she said it so many times and unnecessarily that even someone in her ear said, stop using that word. So it's just, don't let your mind run away with you. Be in the moment. Don't fill space if you don't need to, and don't feel like you need to put in filler words for the sake of it. So that was a really great lesson. And with Kanya, also, I feel like now it's maybe it's because I just named them. That's why I'm thinking of them. Kanya, we spoke about, finding your purpose. She said she got this question a lot from her followers about finding your purpose. And with that, your purpose can be so many different things. And she said she's still searching. I don't think it's something you ever stop searching for or figuring out or whatever. But it's finding your purpose is looking at things that, bring you the most enjoyment in a way. So not necessarily saying like sitting on the couch, because that is a great time. It brings me a lot of joy, but I think over time that gets boring. So hers was actually to be in service of people. And she realized that lit her up. So she's like, figuring out those things will help you along the way to getting to your purpose. And she said she knows her purpose is servicing people or be of service to people. So she was producing content of home workouts because COVID lockdown, no one knew what to do. They couldn't go to gyms or classes. So she was just like, try these exercises. And it grew and grew and grew. And she exploded that way. And I'm just trying to think. One account, I've forgotten the lady's name off the top of my head, but she's based in Dubai, and she was like, she's in the cybersecurity space. I think it's a cybersecurity space, and she owns a business with her husband, but she was top dog at other companies prior to that. And this is a very key lesson that I thought was one of my favorites, is that even when you are top dog, you can fuck up. Because she said that she lost a $20 million account because she got lazy with process. So the lesson for her was, always stick to basics. Just stick to basics. Channel, don't think you can, take a shortcut into something, whatever, like just basic process, just follow the steps. She said it worked out for her because the company ended up going under a couple of months later. But I mean, $20 million is still a lot of money. And yeah, so I was like, cool. If she can recover from that and the company is still going and is doing really well, then you know what? $20 million, what? It's okay.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. All of those lessons, I feel like I could speak into all of them. You spoke about finding your purpose. And I remember I'm on it's a life of me, can't remember whose podcast was, but it was some podcast you've been doing a guest who traveled around the world. And the guest was talking about when he went east, so Asia, Indonesia, those kind of countries. And in those countries, when you would ask someone, who are you? They didn't say, oh, I'm an architect, or I'm an engineer, or I work in cybersecurity. They answer with something to do with, what they do in their own time, because they don't have their personality centered around what they do 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. They have it centered around what they enjoy and how they want to spend their family. They'll say things like, I'm a wife or a husband who, enjoys gardening and those kind of things. That's where they see themselves, rather than I'm an architect, which is so fascinating. Then, call in a Western culture, we sort of surround ourselves with this idea that my job is who I am, not what I do in my spare time, which is just really fascinating. And then I said to you, I've got a really tough final question for you.
Yeah, and, I'm ready.
About a lot of lessons we've learned.
I know Josh loves this question.
I do.
Josh, he loves this question. Every time he asks someone, he's like, I can see his excitement is like building up inside of him.
So the question I wanted to ask you was, you really enjoy the Tea with Nikki, but what would success or an end goal look like for the Tea with Nikki? I know that's a tough question.
Not a tough question. Well, I want to make money from it. That's the end goal. I want to make money. I definitely want to be able to monetize the podcast. That's definitely a goal. And then I would definitely consider it to be a proper success. I think it's successful now that we're able to reach the people that we do. And like I was saying, there's people, high execs at Woolies who's watched it. I've got colleagues who've watched it, and other people from all over I don't even know who. Just these are from who I know directly. So that for me is one step on success, because success, I think you always move the goalpost anyway. So I might say, I want to monetize it, and then when I do, I'm not done. That's not end of success for me. So definitely step one of that successful journey is to monetize it. Now we've got the people there a little bit. We can grow a lot more. I want to monetize it. I'd like it to be, have numerous amounts of subscribers. I'd like, where I would think it's actually successful is if it's on the map and people would consider it a great podcast and one that they're dying to listen to and go to, like you hear Joe Rogan, Diary of a CEO, Jay Shetty, it's On Purpose, I think that's his one, On Purpose. So, being able to contend with those, but within a South African context. My goal, I haven't really said it loud, but I'll say it now, is to be the number one podcast in South Africa. We've got so many out here, so it's really hard. And I also don't say what genre, so as long as we're number one, then really say that it's success.
Amazing. It's quite interesting to talk about as well, keep shifting the goalposts, because that's kind of why I asked the question. I enjoy asking people the question tongue-in-cheek a little bit, because I'm aware of that. As you say, if you got to 1 million subscribers and I said to you, oh, you're done now, you've got 1 million subscribers, you can just take it easy, post wherever you want or whatever. But as you said, the goalposts just keep shifting.
Always moves, yeah.
Thanks for your time. I think it's been great, really fascinating learning all about content and learning about how you kind of utilize those skills and lessons in the content that you produce yourself. So until the next time, guys, thanks for taking a listen. This has been the Frostcast.